I'm Jason, 32 years old, and last Thursday my brother Mike died in a car accident on his way to meet me for lunch. The police said he died instantly when a truck ran a red light. His body was still warm when I identified him at the hospital. I called my fiancée Sarah immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Babe, Mike's dead." I choked on the words. Her response? "Oh my God, that's terrible timing. I just finished my nails for the trip." Not "I'm coming" or "Where are you?" Just concern about her fresh manicure for Miami. She was in our bedroom packing when I stumbled through the door 20 minutes later. I collapsed to my knees and sobbed while she continued folding bikinis into her open suitcase. She checked her watch and sighed. "Jason, I'm really sorry about Mike, but my flight leaves in 3 hours and the girls are already on their way to the airport." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Sarah, my brother just died. I need you here." She zipped her suitcase closed and said, "You have your parents to lean on. I've been planning this trip for months. I even offered to pay for her to take another trip after the funeral or for us to travel together when I was feeling better." Her response? "This trip is non-refundable, and I'm not disappointing everyone." That night, I sat alone arranging my brother's funeral while watching her Instagram stories upload one by one. Her laughing at the airport bar with her friends, taking selfies on the plane, tagging her location at Miami Beach with the caption, "Girls' weekend finally here. Blessed." As if my world hadn't just shattered into a million pieces. But what happened next was even worse. A discovery that would change everything I thought I knew about our relationship. If you've ever watched someone you love choose their own happiness over your darkest moment of need, let me know in the comments. Sarah and I met 3 years ago at a charity 5K for cancer research. I was volunteering at the water station when she ran up, drenched in sweat, but somehow still stunning. Instead of grabbing water and moving on like everyone else, she stopped, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You have the kindest smile I've ever seen." Just like that, I was done for. What made me fall for Sarah wasn't just her beauty, though with her deep brown eyes and contagious laugh, she had that in spades. It was her ambition. The way she built her marketing business from nothing after college. It was her creativity, how she could walk into a room and immediately envision how to transform it. And it was her apparent loyalty. She talked about her friends like family, always putting their birthdays in her calendar months in advance, never forgetting a celebration. Our relationship moved quickly. First date at a hole-in-the-wall Italian place where she impressed me by ordering in perfect Italian. 6 months later, moving into my downtown apartment together. At the 1-year mark, a carefully planned weekend in Napa, where I proposed at sunset among the vineyards. She said yes before I could even finish asking. My career as an architectural engineer kept us comfortable. I worked hard to provide stability, often taking on extra projects to save for our future and the house we planned to buy next year. Sarah always said she admired my work ethic, how I could grind without complaining, as she put it. I took pride in being the reliable one, the steady hand in our relationship. Sarah's event planning business met irregular hours and frequent weekend work, but I supported her completely. I'd bring dinner to her office during late nights, help set up for events when she was short-handed, even invested some of my savings when she wanted to expand last year. I believed in her dreams as much as my own. Looking back, the warning signs were there, buried under my willingness to see the best in her. How she'd cancel our plans last minute if a friend called with an invitation. The way she'd turn every minor disagreement into me controlling her independence. Her constant complaints that I was too predictable or not spontaneous enough. The weekly girls' nights that gradually stretched from a few hours to entire weekends, after which she'd return home with stories that sometimes didn't quite add up. For her birthday last year, I surprised her with a trip to Paris, somewhere she'd always wanted to go. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, her friend Jen broke up with her boyfriend, and Sarah insisted on staying behind to support her through this difficult time. I went alone, sending her pictures of all the places we'd planned to visit together. She rarely responded, too busy with emergency wine nights and healing brunches for Jen. When she did reply, her messages came at odd hours with the location tags disabled, something I didn't think to question at the time. Still, I believed we were solid. When Mike asked me last month if I was sure about marrying Sarah, I didn't hesitate. "She's the one," I told him. My brother just nodded and said, "I hope she deserves you, man." I wish I'd paid more attention to what he wasn't saying, to the concern behind his eyes. The night before his accident, Mike called me. "Jason, I need to talk to you about Sarah. It's important." But I was finishing a project deadline and asked if we could discuss it over lunch the next day. "Sure, but don't put it off," he said, his voice unusually serious. Those were the last words my brother ever spoke to me. That lunch never happened, and whatever he needed to tell me about Sarah died with him that day. Or so I thought. The morning Mike died started like any other Thursday. I made coffee while Sarah scrolled through Instagram in bed. I remember the mundane details so clearly now. The shirt I picked for work was missing a button, so I changed it. Sarah complained about the almond milk going bad. I kissed her goodbye and said, "Don't forget we have dinner with my parents on Sunday." She nodded without looking up from her phone, already messaging someone with a smile she quickly hid when she noticed me watching. I was in a client meeting when my phone vibrated. Mike's name flashed on the screen. I excused myself, thinking he was calling about our lunch plans. Instead, it was a paramedic using my brother's phone. "There's been an accident." 4 words that split my life into before and after. The drive to the hospital exists in my memory as fragments. Running 3 red lights, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in years. The paramedic's voice echoing, "Critical condition, doing everything we can." I arrived 5 minutes too late. The doctor met me in the hallway, still wearing surgical scrubs spotted with what I realized was my brother's blood. "I'm sorry, Mr. Foster. We did everything we could." I remember asking stupid, pointless questions. Did he feel anything? Was he conscious? As if the answers could somehow make this better. They let me see him. Mike looked almost peaceful, like he might wake up if I shook him hard enough. But the stillness, that absolute stillness that only comes with death, told me he was gone. My little brother, who I'd taught to ride a bike, who called me every Sunday without fail, who'd been my best man at my engagement party 3 months ago. My hands trembled as I called Sarah. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, music and laughter in the background. I could barely speak through my tears. "Mike's dead. Car accident. I'm at Memorial Hospital." The line went quiet for a moment. Then came her response about her nails, about the terrible timing, as if my brother had inconsiderately scheduled his death to interfere with her vacation plans. When I got home, Sarah was bustling around our bedroom, tossing shoes and makeup into her suitcase while chatting on speakerphone with her friend Jen. "I know, I can't wait either. Did you pack the silver dress or the gold one?" She glanced up when I entered, saw my devastated face, and said to Jen, "Hey, I'll call you back. Jason's home." She hung up and gave me a quick, awkward hug that felt more obligatory than comforting. "I'm really sorry about Mike, babe. That's awful." Then she immediately turned back to her packing. "The Uber will be here in 40 minutes. I've already checked in for my flight online." I sank onto the edge of the bed, still in shock. "Sarah, I need you. Please don't go." She sighed like I was being difficult on purpose. "Jason, we've had this trip planned for months. Everyone's counting on me. I'm the one who organized everything." "My brother just died," I said, my voice breaking. "I need to arrange a funeral. I need to tell our parents. I can't do this alone." "It's 3 days," she countered, checking her makeup in the mirror. "Your parents will help. And it's not like there's anything I can do for Mike now anyway." The coldness of that statement hit me like physical pain. This isn't about doing something for Mike. It's about supporting me, being there for me during the worst moment of my life. She turned to face me, irritation flashing across her face. "I support you all the time, Jason. I'm allowed to have this one trip. I'll pay for another trip," I offered desperately. "For all of you, after the funeral, or we could go somewhere together when I'm feeling better." please, Sarah." She zipped her suitcase closed with finality. "The hotel is non-refundable. The club tables are reserved. Everyone has already taken time off work. I'm sorry about Mike. I really am, but I'm not disappointing 5 other people because of this." Because of this. Like, my brother's death was an inconvenience, a minor schedule conflict. The Uber arrived and she rolled her suitcase to the door. She gave me another quick hug, this one even more perfunctory than the last. "Shh, I'll check in later. Try to get some rest, okay? I'm sure you're in shock." And then she was gone, off to Miami, while I sat alone in our apartment, surrounded by the shattered pieces of my life. I called my parents after that. Listened to my mother's wail of grief when I told her Mike was gone. Drove to their house and held them as we all broke down. Made calls to the funeral home. Collected my brother's personal effects from the police. All things Sarah should have been by my side for, all moments she should have shared in my grief. That night, as I lay sleepless in our bed, her Instagram posts began appearing. "Touchdown Miami. Let the girls' weekend begin. Squad goals." Photos of cocktails, of her and her friends posing in bikinis by the hotel pool. Not a single mention of Mike, not a word about what I was going through. Just as if nothing had happened at all. The next few days passed in a blur of grief and logistics. Planning a funeral is a special kind of hell. Picking out a casket for someone who was supposed to outlive me, choosing funeral clothes for a body that just days ago was full of life. I handled everything alone. The obituary, the service arrangements, notifying distant relatives. Through it all, the weight of Sarah's absence felt like another loss entirely. My parents were devastated, but stepped up despite their own grief. My dad helped with the funeral home paperwork while fighting back tears. My mom arranged food for after the service, though she could barely eat herself. My best friend Dave came over daily, sometimes just sitting silently with me when words failed. "Mike would be proud of how you're handling this," he said one evening, his hand on my shoulder. Those simple words somehow gave me the strength to make it through another day. Colleagues sent flowers. Neighbors brought meals. Even the barista at my regular coffee shop offered condolences when I stopped in for a much-needed caffeine fix. All these people showing up while the woman who wore my engagement ring was posting pool party videos from Miami. Sarah's 3-day trip somehow stretched to 5. Her messages were sporadic and shallow. "Thinking of you. How are you holding up?" Never a mention of cutting her trip short, never offering any real support. When I'd call, I'd hear club music in the background, laughter, the unmistakable sounds of people having the time of their lives. Mike's funeral was on Saturday. I texted Sarah the details, and she replied, "Fly back Saturday night, land at 11 p.m., too late for the service, so sorry." Another day added to her trip. I didn't bother responding. I stood alone at my brother's graveside, accepting condolences from people who loved him, many asking where my fiancée was. I made excuses for her absence, though each lie tasted bitter in my mouth. Why was I still protecting someone who couldn't be bothered to show up for me? Sarah finally returned on Sunday night, tanned and seemingly energized by her vacation. She hugged me at the door, her perfume mixed with the lingering scent of sunscreen. "I'm so sorry about Mike," she said, as if mentioning a minor inconvenience rather than my brother's death. "How was the funeral?" She dropped her bags in our bedroom and immediately started scrolling through her phone, showing me beach photos while I sat numb on the edge of our bed. Something had changed in me. The pain was still there, but now it was joined by a clarity I hadn't expected. This woman was a stranger to me. "Did you miss me?" she asked, not looking up from her phone. I didn't answer. Instead, I asked, "Why does your location history show you weren't in Miami the whole time?" Her head snapped up, eyes suddenly alert. "What?" While she was gone, I'd used her laptop to email Mike's photos to the funeral home for the memorial display. A notification had popped up, a hotel confirmation for a resort in Key West, not Miami. The reservation was for Sarah and one other guest, and it wasn't one of her girlfriends. "Your confirmation email," I said quietly, "for the Ocean Palms Resort in Key West. For 2 people. But you were in Miami with the girls, right?" Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, calculation, then an attempt at outrage. "You went through my emails? That's a violation of my privacy." "I was putting together photos for my brother's funeral," I said, my voice steady despite the hurricane inside me. "The funeral you skipped." "The girls and I took a day trip to Key West," she said quickly. "It's only a few hours from Miami." I nodded slowly. "And the room booked under the name David Miller? Is he one of the girls too?" She froze, then tried another approach. "It's not what you think." "I think it's exactly what I think," I said. "How long have you been seeing him?" The silence stretched between us like a living thing. Finally, she sighed. "It's complicated, Jason. David and I, we have history, but it's not serious. Not serious. She'd abandoned me during the worst days of my life to be with another man, and it wasn't serious." I stood up, suddenly calm. Was Miami ever real, or was the girls' trip just a cover? "The girls were there too," she said defensively. "In Miami. David met me in Key West for just 2 days. It wasn't planned." The lie was so transparent it was almost laughable. Nothing about this trip had been spontaneous, but there was something else bothering me. Something just beyond my grasp. Then it hit me. The name David Miller sounded familiar. "Miller?" I said slowly. "As in Jen's ex-boyfriend? The one you stayed behind to support her through their breakup last year instead of going to Paris with me?" The look on her face told me everything I needed to know. I'd found the first thread, and the sweater was about to unravel completely. That night, after Sarah had fallen asleep, I sat in our living room with a strange sense of calm. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a methodical determination I recognized from my work as an engineer. When a structural problem emerges in a building design, you don't react emotionally. You investigate systematically until you understand the full extent of the damage. I started with her laptop. She'd changed her email password, but our shared cloud storage was still accessible. In the folder marked Trip Planning, I found not just the Key West reservation, but months of correspondence between Sarah and David. Weekend meetups disguised as work events, hotel bookings in nearby cities, dinner reservations for 2 on nights she'd told me she was working late. Their relationship wasn't new or spontaneous. It had been going on for at least a year. The Paris trip I'd gone on alone? She and David had spent that weekend together while I walked the Champs-Élysées by myself, sending her photos she barely acknowledged. I moved on to our phone bill, which was in my name. Hundreds of texts to the same number daily, often late at night when she was supposedly asleep beside me. Calls that lasted hours on days when she claimed to be stuck in meetings. The number wasn't saved in our shared contacts, but a simple reverse lookup confirmed it. David Miller. By dawn, I'd compiled a timeline of their relationship, complete with dates, locations, and messages. This wasn't just a fling or a mistake. This was a calculated, ongoing deception that had been happening right under my nose while I planned our wedding and supported her dreams. But something still nagged at me. Mike's last words, "I need to talk to you about Sarah. It's important." Had my brother known about the affair? Was that what he wanted to tell me before he died? Sometimes the most devastating betrayals come from those closest to us. Has someone's true colors ever shocked you when you needed them most? Share your experience in the comments and continue watching for the conclusion of my story, the confrontation that would finally bring everything to light. I called Dave, who had been Mike's friend too. "Did Mike ever mention anything to you about Sarah? About her possibly seeing someone else?" The silence on the other end of the line told me everything. "Jason, man, Mike was gonna tell you. He found out a couple weeks ago. Saw Sarah and some guy at a restaurant downtown when he was supposed to be out of town at that conference." My throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Mike asked me not to. Said he wanted to handle it himself, brother to brother. I've been sick about it since the accident, but I didn't know how to bring it up with everything you're going through." Another piece fell into place. Sarah's insistence on going on this trip, her complete lack of compassion about Mike's death, it wasn't just selfishness. She was relieved. My brother's death meant her secret was safe, or so she thought. I needed more concrete evidence. Text messages and hotel bookings could be explained away, denied, or minimized. I needed something irrefutable. Something she couldn't spin or lie her way out of. I remembered Sarah mentioning that her friend Jen had stayed at the Ocean Palms in Key West before and had recommended it. The same Jen whose emergency breakup had been the excuse for Sarah to skip Paris with me. I'd always liked Jen, found her more genuine than Sarah's other friends. Maybe she didn't know she'd been used as an alibi. I texted her, "Jen, I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Sarah and David." Her response came quickly. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out. I'm so sorry, Jason. It's been eating me alive." We met for coffee that afternoon. Jen looked terrible, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervousness I'd never seen in her before. "I've wanted to tell you for months," she said, "but Sarah convinced everyone it would destroy you, that it was better to keep it quiet." "How long?" I asked, gripping my coffee cup so tightly I thought it might shatter. "Since before you got engaged," she said quietly. "I'm sorry, Jason. We've all been covering for her. The girls' trips, the work emergencies, they were all excuses to meet David. And this trip to Miami?" Jen looked down at her coffee. "There was no girls' trip to Miami. That was just the cover story. Sarah and David went to Key West together. She made us all promise to post photos from Miami and tag her in them, old pictures from a trip we took last year. We were supposed to make it look like she was with us the whole time." I felt strangely detached, like I was discussing someone else's life. "I need proof, Jen, something concrete." She pulled out her phone. "I have text conversations where she lays out the whole Miami cover story, and I have this." She pulled up a photo and turned the phone toward me. It was Sarah and David, arms around each other on a Key West beach. The timestamp showed it was taken the day after Mike died. "There's more," Jen said. "Sarah's been telling David that you're controlling, that you're boring in bed, that she only stayed with you because you're financially stable while she builds her business. She's been planning to leave you after the wedding. Something about better divorce terms once you're married." Each word was like another piece of glass in my heart, but I remained composed. "Can you send me all of this? The texts, the photos, everything?" Jen nodded. "I'm done lying for her, Jason. What she did, especially after your brother died, it's unforgivable." I had one more card to play. I contacted the Ocean Palms Resort. As an architectural engineer, I'd actually consulted on their renovation project last year. The manager still remembered me. When I explained my situation, carefully, professionally, he was sympathetic. "We have security cameras in all public areas, Mr. Foster. If your fiancée was here with someone else on those dates, there would be footage." 2 hours later, an email arrived with several video clips attached. Sarah and David entering the hotel lobby, his arm around her waist. The two of them kissing by the pool. Sharing a candlelit dinner at the hotel restaurant. All time stamped during the days following my brother's death, while I was planning his funeral alone. I downloaded everything, backed it up in multiple locations, and then poured myself a single drink. Not to numb the pain, but to toast my brother. "You tried to warn me, Mike," I said to the empty room. "I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner, but I hear you now." I didn't confront Sarah that night, or the next day. I needed the perfect moment, the right setting. This wasn't about a heated argument or an emotional outburst. This was about justice, for myself and for Mike. 4 days after Sarah returned from Miami, we hosted the dinner we'd scheduled with my parents before Mike's death. Sarah had suggested canceling, but my mom insisted we needed family time to heal. What Sarah didn't know was that I'd spoken with my parents the day before. They deserved to know the truth about the woman who was supposed to become their daughter-in-law, especially after she'd abandoned me during our family tragedy. I spent the afternoon cooking Mike's favorite meal, grilled steaks with roasted potatoes and that fancy asparagus with lemon that he always said made vegetables almost worth eating. Sarah seemed confused by my calm demeanor, the lack of grief-stricken outbursts she'd witnessed in previous days. "You seem better," she commented while setting the table. "I've gained some perspective," I replied simply. Her parents arrived first, blissfully unaware of what was coming, but pleased to see Sarah's supportive fiancé holding up so well after that terrible business with his brother. My parents arrived shortly after, my mother's eyes still red-rimmed from crying but determined to be strong. Sarah was in her element, playing the perfect hostess, talking about wedding venues and color schemes as if she hadn't been plotting to eventually divorce me. As if she hadn't been with another man days ago while I buried my brother. We made it through appetizers with casual conversation. I waited until everyone had been served the main course before I gently tapped my glass with my fork. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, standing. Everyone smiled expectantly, probably thinking I was about to say something about Mike, or thank them for their support. "To honesty," I said instead. "Something I've come to value tremendously these past few days." Sarah's smile faltered slightly. I could see calculation in her eyes, wondering what was coming. "Sarah has been telling me for months that I need to be more spontaneous," I continued, my voice steady. "So tonight, I've prepared a little surprise for everyone." I walked to the television in the dining room and connected my phone. "I've put together a short video I'd like us all to watch, about truth, consequences, and the importance of being where you say you'll be." Sarah half rose from her chair. "Jason, we're in the middle of dinner. Is this really the time?" "It's exactly the time," I said quietly. "Please, everyone, just a few minutes of your attention." The screen lit up with security footage from the Ocean Palms Resort. Sarah and David entering the lobby, arms around each other. A timestamp in the corner, the day after Mike died. Then, photos from Jen, text messages between Sarah and David, all meticulously organized and captioned with dates and times. The room fell silent. Sarah's mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her father stared at his plate, the color draining from his face. My parents reached for each other's hands, their suspicions confirmed. Sarah's face drained of color. "This isn't, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said calmly. "While I was identifying my brother's body, you were booking a romantic getaway with David. While I was planning a funeral, you were sipping cocktails poolside with your boyfriend. While I was burying Mike, you were having sex in a luxury resort." I turned to our parents. Sarah has been sleeping with David Miller for over a year. The girls' trips, the work emergencies, even the time she skipped our Paris vacation because her friend needed support after a breakup, all lies to cover her affair. Sarah stood up, knocking over her wine glass. "You had no right to go through my private messages. This is an invasion of privacy. Like the invasion of having another man in our relationship for the past year, or the invasion of having my brother die while you were busy cheating on me." My voice remained level, controlled. "The privacy ship sailed when you made our relationship a lie." Her mother was crying now. "Sarah, please tell me this isn't true." But Sarah's focus was still on me, her face twisting with anger. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It was just physical. It didn't mean anything." "It meant something to me," I said. "And it meant enough to you that you chose him over me during the worst moment of my life." I reached into my pocket and placed her engagement ring on the table. "I think dinner is over. You can pack your things tonight. I've already contacted the landlord. I'm staying with my parents until you're gone." Her father finally spoke, his voice strained. "We'll take her home with us." The disappointment in his eyes when he looked at his daughter spoke volumes. As they gathered their things in humiliated silence, I maintained my composure. No shouting, no name-calling, no threats. Just the quiet dignity of someone who knows his own worth. When Sarah tried one last desperate approach, "Jason, please, we can work through this," I simply opened the door and gestured for them to leave. "The only thing I regret," I said as she passed me, "is that Mike died trying to protect me from finding out the truth about you. He deserved better, and so did I." The door closed behind them, and for the first time since learning of Sarah's betrayal, I felt something like peace. The weeks following the dinner were a blur of practical matters and quiet reflection. I stayed with my parents while Sarah moved out, supervised by my friend Dave to ensure she took only what was hers. She left behind the engagement ring and several tearful voicemails I never returned. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. Dividing our shared life was surprisingly straightforward. Most of the furniture was mine from before our relationship. The wedding deposits became donations to a trauma center that had tried to save Mike. I sold the honeymoon tickets and used the money to start a small scholarship in my brother's name at our old high school. Grief is a strange companion when paired with betrayal. Sometimes I couldn't separate the pain of losing Mike from the hurt of Sarah's deception. Other days they felt like entirely different wounds. One a gaping hole nothing could fill, the other a clean break that would eventually heal stronger. My parents worried about me carrying this double burden, but I found unexpected strength in facing both losses head-on. "You're handling this with remarkable grace," my mother said one evening. I told her the truth. I'm trying to live in a way that would make Mike proud. I returned to work after a month, diving into a challenging downtown redevelopment project that required my full focus. The precision and problem-solving of structural engineering gave my mind respite from emotional turmoil. My colleagues respected my space while ensuring I wasn't alone unless I wanted to be. Physical activity became my therapy. I started running, something Mike had always tried to get me to do. The first mile was torture. By the 10th, I understood why he'd loved it. The rhythm of feet on pavement, the measured breathing, the quiet achievement of each additional quarter mile, it all brought a kind of peace I hadn't expected. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my relationship with Sarah. Turns out she had subtly isolated me, making excuses for why we couldn't attend gatherings, claiming certain friends of mine were boring or bad influences. Classic manipulation I should have recognized. The most important transformation wasn't external, but internal. I stopped blaming myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I recognized that trust isn't weakness, even when it's betrayed. I learned that maintaining dignity in crisis reveals true character far more than lashing out in anger. 6 months after Mike's death, I scattered some of his ashes at our favorite fishing spot, a small lake where we'd spent countless summer days as kids. As I watched the ashes drift across the still water, I finally felt something shift inside me. Not closure, I don't believe in that concept anymore, but acceptance. Acceptance that life contains both beautiful connections and painful losses, sometimes delivered by the same hands. I won't lie and say I've fully healed. I still miss my brother every day. I still occasionally wonder how Sarah could have been so callous, so void of basic human compassion. But I no longer let those questions consume me. Instead, I focus on building a life with authentic connections, friends who show up when it matters, family who stands by me through the worst moments, and the self-respect to walk away from those who don't value my worth. That's the meaning I've wrestled from this loss. That's the transformation grief and betrayal carved into me. 1 year after Mike's death, I was in a much better place. The architectural firm had promoted me to senior engineer. I'd moved into a new apartment downtown. The grief support group I'd joined had become a circle of unexpected friendships with people who understood loss without needing explanations. I was having coffee at my usual Saturday morning spot when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I need to talk to you. Please. It's important. Sarah." It was the first contact attempt in 6 months. I'd heard through mutual friends that she and David had moved in together almost immediately after our breakup. I considered ignoring the message, but something told me to respond. "What about?" Her reply came quickly. "Can we meet? Just for 15 minutes. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a public park nearby. When she arrived, I barely recognized her. Gone was the confident, polished woman I'd once planned to marry. She looked tired, nervous, thinner. "David's been cheating on me," she said without preamble. "With multiple women for months." She tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. Karma, right? I felt no satisfaction at her pain, just a strange detachment. "I'm sorry that happened to you." I thought. She hesitated. "I thought maybe we could talk, about us, about trying again." She reached for my hand across the table. "I made a terrible mistake, Jason. I miss what we had." I gently withdrew my hand. "There is no us anymore, Sarah." "But you're such a good man," she insisted, tears forming. I threw away something real for something that was just empty. I stood up, a sense of finality settling over me. The night Mike died, he left me a voicemail I didn't see until weeks later. He said, "Sometimes loss shows us what we really had." He was right, but not in the way he meant. I looked at her directly. "Losing you showed me what I never actually had, someone who truly loved me." As I walked away, my phone buzzed again. A message from Ellie, a woman I'd met in grief group whose husband had died 2 years earlier. "Still on for hiking tomorrow?" I smiled and replied, "Absolutely." I'd been hesitant to start dating again, but Ellie understood grief isn't something you get over. It's something